Bradley Cooper, like that raspy, deep voice,
Yeah.
like, you better dig deep down into your soul and you better believe what you say.
That was a good impression of it.
You like that?
Yeah, that was great.
Or your audience will know.
Yeah.
That's probably my main piece of advice to leaders is like, whatever you believe deep down inside your soul, whoever you are is going to come out.
Yeah. How'd you end up at Entrata? I don't know that story's been fully told to the community, has it? At least
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know
You probably know, and a few people, but yeah, going back to before that, I was at Podium for almost 5 years, and my wife and I in 2019 had like this midlife crisis, which I'm so glad we had. And we had a bunch of friends down in San Clemente, California, and we just picked up our family and left, and just moved down there for a couple of years. My health.
It's a beautiful place too, isn't it?
It's a special part of the world. Yeah. And when I went there and left Podium, I was emotionally, energetically, spiritually, physically bankrupt. Like I had nothing left to give the world. You remember the Pixar movie Soul?
Mm-hmm.
And it shows, in the soul world, a lost soul is this kind of just big dark cloud of energy that's trying to it's just kind of wandering around.
Yeah.
And that it'll show in the real world. It's like a hedge fund manager or something. I was one of those. I just had kind of lost my joy for life. And we went down there, and that place kind of brought me back. It healed me. I rode my bike a lot, asked myself a lot of questions. It was interesting to go through that process of being, in the thick of building businesses for almost 20 years.
Mm.
And then one day, your phone stops ringing.
Yeah.
And you delete Slack, and everything goes really silent, which at first is kind of terrifying because it made me feel very, very... This is a terrible word to use, but it's true. I felt irrelevant.
Interesting.
And it was not comfortable
yeah.
for me to go through. But for me, I think it was really necessary. It helped me kind of reset my priorities, what
Sure.
I wanted to spend like the second half of my career doing. When I originally was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to work again.
Yeah.
Like, I just was so burned out. And, over the course of several months, and, I started seeing like an executive coach and started doing counseling and, really spent a lot of time trying to figure myself out. And, I didn't miss the commotion so much. Like I remember telling people back then, I'm like, it's so nice to not walk into a building on a Monday morning and have all these people waiting for me to make decisions.
Yeah.
But during that time, I started to get texts from people that I'd worked with over the previous 3 companies I was at.
Sure.
And they would just send me these little notes of, hey, remember this conversation we had, or you took a big, gamble on me when you made this decision or gave me this promotion, or, thanks for this one thing you probably don't even know how much it meant to me. And I realized what drove me is those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an executive coach that I remember her, after she got to know me well, she verbalized it to me that way. She said, Adam, your currency in life is relationships. And I never thought of myself that way. And I just missed the people. I missed the relationships. I missed building with people. I missed watching people grow. I missed watching people get promoted and make more money and have success and struggle and figure things out. And so I decided I was going to get back into it. I thought I was going to start a business. And I actually came back to Utah to visit, and I was going to meet with, all the local CEOs,
Sure.
Ryan and Josh,
Yeah.
and I was going to pitch them on my product. It was kind of a SaaS play for B2B companies. And my goal was, hey, I'm going to get you all to invest, and you have to buy my product. And then I ended up meeting Dave, the founder of Entrata, and he was like, hey, there's this great business here. I don't really have any energy or desire to kind of take it to this next level. Why don't you come and do it? And at first I was like, that running a 2,500 person company is the last thing I want to do.
Yeah, it's a big company.
In my life, I'd never seen that scale.
Yeah.
Podium was maybe 1,000 when I left. But as I got in, started to learn about it, it was just clearly a monster
Yeah.
that nobody knew about.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, joined almost 3 years ago now. And I've just loved it. Like, I always wanted to be that cool founder, entrepreneur guy.
Yeah.
But I started to kind of figure this out at Podium, and now I've really figured it out here. I'm one of those boring operator guys. So as much as I want to pretend I'm a cool founder, I'm a very mediocre founder. I'm a pretty good operator.
That's not true. You sold a company, right, to Merit CX?
Yeah, I started 2 on my own. Silent Whistle, which I sold in
Yeah.
09, and then Allegiance that I sold in 14. And they were great. I loved
Yeah.
them. And that's where I learned all of the hard things that I had to go through.
Sure.
You look financially at them, they were both like, okay.
Yeah.
Not anywhere near the last couple that I've been involved with. But I love those businesses. But, founders I know and I've worked with some of the best.
Mm-hmm.
They're nuts. They're crazy.
Yeah.
They're obsessed with everything. They want to make every decision. And that's what you have to do to be a great one.
Yeah.
I'm more of like, my love language is like revenue growth and customer acquisition metrics and running board meetings and raising money. And it's okay. I've come to accept that that's what I am. I'm one of those boring operator guys, and I'm okay with it.
That's incredible, man. Why do you think you got so burnt out?
Probably because I didn't know why I was doing what I was doing. I was actually our mutual good friend Susan Peterson has a podcast.
Yeah.
And she asked me a question a few months ago on that about what drives me. Like, people like you, what drives this inner engine you have?
Yeah.
And I just spit these words out, and it was kind of shocking to me, and I've thought a lot about it since. I said, I'm not really running to success. I'm running from failure.
Interesting.
And as I've thought about that and really learned more about myself, that probably encapsulates my whole life. I joke around that one of my superpowers is like shame.
Mm-hmm.
Like I really have been on a mission since I was a little kid to prove that I'm not a loser.
Yeah.
And here's the problem with that, though, that I'm still figuring out and why I got so burned out. If you can figure out how to run to success, figure out how to run to happiness,
Mm-hmm.
you can be done at some point.
Yeah.
If you're always running from failure and shame and being a loser, which I think is more common than not.
Sure.
I've talked about this with some of my peers and, our common friends.
Yeah.
I won't speak for anybody else, but I think we're all wired in a similar way.
Absolutely.
But you don't ever get to be done if you can't make that switch. You're going to always be running from failure. You can have all the success in the world, but if you're running from failure, you're going to keep going and burn yourself out and wonder why you even did it all. So I'm still in that, kind of personal journey of doing things for the right reason.
Yeah.
So
where do you think those expectations come from? Like I don't want to fail. I don't want to be a loser. Were you getting that from like family growing up? Were you getting that from like pressure in just general society, or that just comes from within us? Where does that come from?
I think it's in me. Look, I grew up in South Jordan, Utah. I grew up in the Mormon religion. I think there's a lot of, not just in the Mormon religion, I think there's religious constructs that can maybe contribit to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I already have to say, my mom will be listening to this and be sad because every time she hears me talk about this stuff, she's like, I tried my best. But my parents are amazing. So it wasn't them. I never had crazy, unreal expectations placed on me by my parents or anyone around me. I didn't have older siblings I was trying to outdo that I could, it was just in me. And for a while, once I started to identify what it was, I kind of felt shame about my shame. Why do I have this? Why can't I be one of those people who runs to success? And then about a year and a half ago, dude, we're going deep. You always get me going deep.
I always go deep, man.
I realized one night I was actually talking to my exec coach, and she asked me, what purpose is that shame serving for you? I thought a lot about that. And then I realized, I'm like, here's the weird thing. My shame creates everything I like about myself. It creates my drive. It creates my work ethic. Like I'm a really good dad. Like I'm a really, good friend to people. I try to be loyal. I try to be, good in my job. I don't want shame to be the reason that drives me forever. But I've got this, kind of almost appreciation that is what kind of created a lot of that. And I think I ended up writing that kind of this thought up about, that realization. I sent it to a friend of mine. I'm like, hey, what do you think? Who's a super successful person as well. And he said, if you replaced shame with anxiety for me, he's like,
Yeah.
this is the exact same thing I feel. So, I think we all just have our little inner workings, and we're all on our own personal journey to figure those out. And I'm still trying to figure mine out.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do? Like, how do you overcome that? Because, as you know, like, it's been a crazy couple of years on my end too, and like figuring that out, like how to like stay balanced and not like let the anxiety and stuff consume you, is pretty wild. I don't think that I figured that out. Have you figured out any like cool tricks to do this?
For me, biking's good. Like,
exercise is unbelievable for your mental health.
So if it's running or biking, my wife's a yoga person. Like, if I go up American Fort Canyon on my bike at 6 a.m. and nobody's up there, I can just get to the summit up there. You're at 8,200 feet or whatever, and I can just breathe for a minute and like find that balance just for a minute. But it's like we all have it in us. Like you can find it. And for me, I have to go find it. It doesn't come naturally.
Yeah.
Like I've got a son he's far more resilient than me. He's just easygoing. He doesn't have these like inner demons always talking to him. And I think just acknowledging that I'm just not like that. I have to go find it. I've got like a special playlist of songs that help me kind of get to that headspace. And when I start getting really fired up, angry, anxious, whatever, sometimes I just get in my car or on a plane and I just put my headphones on and I just turn those songs on and breathe, and just try and find that spot. But if I figure out like the permanent solution, I'll let you know.
But the stress of just life is crazy. And then when you're running an enormous company like you are, like you said, like this is a really, really big company. And it could be the biggest to ever come out of Utah. I mean, it's kind of like it's tracking in a really interesting way. And we'll get into that later. But like the stresses and like the various things that come up that you don't plan for, and like everything that takes to run a company. I mean, I have no idea what it takes to run a company that size, but I'm sure it's insane. Like that on top of just life itself, which is insane.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot to deal with just right there.
Yeah. Yeah, the part that gets tough for me is one of the things I think people like about working with me is I'm pretty balanced. And they can bring me good news, bring me bad news. Like they can always come to me and they're going to get like balanced, calm, like measured help or just a listening ear or whatever. And when I get spun up on my own and can't be that as well for them, that's tough.
Yeah.
And then it kind of puts everyone into their own little frenzy, because when they start to notice if I'm off, then they stop coming to me.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's one of probably my best skills, is I'm pretty open and pretty approachable, and I can think through problems with people. So it's something I try and be pretty aware of, because I don't think any of us probably realize how easy it is for those around us.
Yeah.
To read our energy.
Yeah.
And I've got this really annoying personality trait where the worse I'm doing, the quieter I get.
Sure.
Because I don't want to bother people with it.
Yeah.
But I've noticed
I do that too. I never even thought about that.
It's so annoying.
That's interesting.
And then then they have our tail. They know.
Yeah.
And so what do? They go quiet too.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to bother us because they know we're not doing well.
Yeah.
So it's like a vicious cycle. What I've tried to do a better job of is I just tell people when I'm not great. Like I went through a bunch of like blood transfusion things last fall, and I'd never done anything like this. I told my board and I told the exec team at Entrata, because I didn't want them. My usual would be don't tell them
Yeah.
But then they would just notice like, Adam's like gone for big blocks of time.
Yeah.
What is going on? Is he, and I've learned that if I don't communicate with them, it's too easy to interpret that behavior as disengaged. I've lost my energy. I'm not interested. I don't care, or I'm mad.
Mm-hmm.
And those are all bad. So I just try and tell them like, hey, this is what's going on with my health. This is what's going on in my personal life. And that's not comfortable or normal for me at all. So it's important to have like those open relationships, I think, with your team and with my board. You know, whenever I'm doing really bad, I've got Todd Peterson on my board, and I know I can call Todd day or night.
Yeah.
And just say, I don't need any answers from you, bro. I'm just going to dump a bunch of stuff out on the table here, and then we can wipe it up and go back. And then, like I said, I've got an exec coach. I see a therapist once in a while. I have spent my entire life being closed up.
Yeah, same.
So for me, it's trying to pry myself open. And you have to do it on your own. Like,
yeah,
no one can come and do it for you.
Who's your exec coach? Can you say? Is it?
It's a local person here. Her name's Rachel. I've worked with a few different exec coaches. My last one was like a PhD from Stanford in psychology, focused like a CEO coach. Rachel, what she's good at is I call her like my energetic coach. We talk about like just how I'm feeling. And like when I go talk to her, it's not about like, how do I run an exec team meeting better or a board meeting better? It's like, I am really angry and I don't know why. Let's get to the bottom of like, where is that anger coming from? Cause that's more helpful for me than like, hey, I actually want some like business coaching. So for me, that's what's been helpful.
How do you process like the worry? Because there's always a million things to worry about. Again, just in general life, and then add a 2,500 person company on top of it. How do you like process that? How do you like, here's what I'm going to focus on today, and I'm going to forget all the other things that are kind of like overhanging, you know?
I don't know, this is an annoying answer for them to hear. I try to outsource worry to the execs that I bring on.
Yeah.
I don't do well with worrying. But if you like our CRO, my CTO, our Chief Operating Product Officer, they worry about everything. It's amazing because then I don't have to.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just, I have to, and I've learned this slowly over 20 years. I have to just have really, really good people around me.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, the worry turns into exhaustion for me really, really quickly.
Sure.
And I've just like Entrata, we're lucky. We've got amazing people there, not just like at the exec level, but we've got amazing VPs and managers like all over the place. And so the worry oftentimes doesn't even make it up to me. Like it's been resolved. And I feel really fortunate to work with so many great people like that.
You've been there for 3 years at Entrata, kind of coming after like this kind of like sabbatical almost, right? What have you learned about leading a company, about growing a company? Because Entrata was a monster when you got there. It's even bigger now. It's growing. Again, like it just doesn't slow down. And you recently acquired a company. I mean, what have you learned here?
Yeah, I was always like the small startup guy. You know, I started Podium was like, less than $1 million in revenue when I got involved there. I kind of knew that like Wild West, let's just kind of get a pack of engineers and a pack of salespeople and go figure this thing out. I've learned a lot more about structure. Like vision of a company is easy to explain when you can get everybody in a conference room. The company we just acquired, when we went and did the all hands to announce it to their company, it's like 90 people in one room. And I walked in, I told all of them, I'm like, this feels more natural to me than what I'm doing. But I've really enjoyed the ride. You have to be really structured and measured, and you have to communicate far more clearly. You have to be more balanced and diverse in thought and team building and company building. You've got a lot of eyeballs, a lot of lenses on you. One thing that, I have learned, like politicians probably know this already, but you'll never make everybody happy.
Yeah.
Just with that many people. every decision you make, there's probably going to be a cohort that they're not super pumped with that decision.
Yeah.
I genuinely try to always make the best decision for everyone, but it's just, and I'm a people pleaser, so it's hard to not have an approval rating of 100% all the time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I've become a lot better at those kind of things. I was always more of just like, hey, let's just go fast and people will figure out the vision as we go. And we don't really need to care about that kind of stuff. But, we really clearly talk about what our goals are from a revenue, a growth standpoint, profitability. We have really good metrics. We try and be super transparent with those as we go forward. And I've never worked, the other thing that's been fun about Entrata, I've never worked in vertical SaaS. I've always been in like horizontal marketing solutions, where one day I was selling to Delta and the next day to American Express and the next day to Disney and then Chili's. We only sell to multifamily property management companies. And what's cool is we do everything for them.
Yeah.
We are their accounting system, their marketing system, their CRM. We do all their background checks. We process all their payments. We, like they use us for taxes. We have public companies using our accounting solution. We do their utilities. Now we, help their residents. We have a suite of resident services now, like renters insurance and reporting their rent payments to credit bureaus. There's like these $1 billion addressable markets all over the place. And that's super fun. Again, you have to be really deliberate about how you build stuff and in what order and make sure you do it right. Because you only have, there's 5,000 logos we can sell to.
Yeah.
So when we put a market out, it has to work, because otherwise everyone knows pretty quickly it didn't work. So, yeah, it's fun. It's like you said, I think it's going to be, right there with Qualtrics. I think it'll be one of the biggest SaaS companies ever built here.
Yeah.
Because of the industry we serve. It's never going away. It grows every year. If anything, it's, going to grow even faster as home ownership gets more and more expensive.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating?
Yeah. And I feel really deep responsibility to make sure this company's great. Like, I'm not the founder. I wasn't even there for the first 18 years of the company's history. But it deserves to reach its potential. Like, it just needs to. And I feel like Utah needs that. The people who built it deserve that. The people who are there deserve that. Whatever role I end up playing for this window will be just a drop in the bucket. But hopefully, we have it on a path where it's going to be a company that people are working at, talking about for decades.
Yeah.
And serving customers in a really important part of our world of living, finding a new place. You move into a new apartment, that oftentimes comes with really emotional events, kids going to new schools, marriages, divorces, graduations. You move because a child gets sick and you need treatment in a specific city. Like, if we can make our customers' lives easier so they can focus on those events, it's a really cool mission. And it's really easy to rally behind. And like I said, when I went there, I just thought, oh, this is an apartment software thing.
Yeah.
But it's a cool opportunity.
You mentioned Todd, who is just the greatest guy in the world, and so real and open and all that type of stuff. What have you learned from him or other mentors and other members of your board? And I mean, these people who have built these incredible companies. I mean, Vivint's just this incredible company that he built and worked on forever and turned it into like an iconic Utah success story.
Yeah.
What have you learned from these guys? Even Ryan, right? Like, some of these guys who've been doing it for so long.
Yeah, Ryan and Todd got involved about 6 months after I joined. They came and helped kind of co-lead the round with Silver Lake, and they've both been really great mentors. I've known them both for years, but I'd never worked with either of them.
Yeah.
And they both have the same mindset that I never had as an entrepreneur. And it's why I think I'm, an okay one, not great, but they think in terms of decades and like long-term sustainability. And so they just look at problems a little more differently than I do sometimes, where I'm focused on like, oh, but if we do this, it'll help our growth rate next quarter, or do this. And Todd especially is always the one in board meetings that's not like hitting the brakes, but reminding me that like, hey, like profitability matters. And, there's just certain aspects of the business that you need to keep really, really healthy. And to just not get overzealous and not like, I heard this phrase just last week that ego costs people more money than anything else in life.
Yeah.
And I think business leaders is the same way.
Yeah.
There's just so many stupid ways to spend money. And Todd's always the guy that's like, kind of reminding me to make sure that like we're being smart with cash, we're staying profitable. And, there's a lot of different ways to grow a business. When I first got to Entrata and we raised that round, we were profitable. We were growing well, but we were really profitable. And when I went out to all these investors, this was early 21 at like getting to the peak. They're like, why are you profitable? Go spend that and grow faster.
Interesting.
And that's just, we kind of, we did spend a little more over the next year or so, but it's funny now that, things have come full circle. It's like, no. People love the profitability and, you can grow organically, which we have entirely to date. But, if you have profit, you can grow through acquisition, you can continue to grow organically, and it just gives you so much more optionality. So, Todd's always that angel on my shoulder reminding me and whispering things to me.
Is that the first round, or at least institutional round, or whatever you'd call it, that Entrata's ever?
Yeah, it was the first one.
Because I think, wasn't there just an angel in there?
Nobu. Yeah.
Yeah, Nobu.
Our man Nobu.
Actually, you introduced me to Nobu.
Yeah,
I love
think
Nobu.
So. Yeah. I think he put money in 04, 05 or something.
Yeah.
Knows it. Yeah. So he's still involved and great
Somebody
guy.
needs to tell his story.
Let's get him on.
Yeah, how
That would be
he has been a part of so many Utah success stories, kind of behind the scenes.
For sure.
He's a prolific angel investor here in the state. So that was the first round, and it was a massive round. At what point were you like, now we're on this trajectory where I need to find some sort of exit, either go public or, pay this back via dividends or whatever it is, right? Like, were you like, hey, this is why we're doing this? Because like you said, it had been profitable for 18 years, just spinning out cash, what was the rationale for like, hey, let's really throw some gas on the fire?
Yeah, the company, before that round, it always kind of operated around break even. They really just kind of plugged every available dollar back into the business, and they went through a really public lawsuit for about 6 or 7 years. Honestly, the company shouldn't even exist. Like, it should have never survived those early years. They had to pivot and do some crazy things, and over 3 years at one point, they had to replace their entire customer base, their entire revenue base. But it never had really had a bunch of fuel go into it to really try and grow, maybe, build out the R&D team a little bit more. And so that's always been the plan. In terms of like what the exit was, I knew within a few months of joining, like, that's not going to matter at this business. Some businesses that does matter. Like, you kind of have a finite, some businesses just will never make good public companies.
Yeah.
This is the first one I've really been confident, like, this can be a big public company for a long time. We have predictable revenue. It's enterprise software, great retention rates. We still don't really talk about that or think about that too much, like at the board level. Like, we're getting ready to be a public company at some point, but there's no hurry.
Particularly right now.
Yeah.
Makes no sense.
Yeah. There's no reason to go rush to be public right now.
Yeah.
So, if and when that time comes, we'll be ready to do it.
There could actually never be a reason to do it. Like, in the same way where like investors were like in 21, they're like, hey, just spend a ton. Like, there's some real advantages to staying private, right? Where you're not as focused on, well, we got to get these quarterly numbers to look good for, and you can think more long term, like Ryan and Todd do.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting too.
Yeah. Like this company we just acquired up in Logan, great business, Rent Dynamics. I didn't have to think about what's the market going to think of this. I didn't that wasn't a thought process. It was like, hey, what does the board think? What does the exec team think? Can we make the numbers work? Is this going to be accretive to us? And then we just go. We've got a lot of public company experience around the table at Entrata, and all those with that experience are like, you don't want to rush into being public.
Take it easy.
It's not fun.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You have people on your board who have, gone through some interesting things. What do you think, in terms of Utah and the growth? I mean, you've been a part of so many interesting, fast-growing companies, and now like this monster company in Entrata. But even with like Podium being there for as long as you were, in your own startups that you did before that with Allegiance, and then becoming into Merit CX and all of that type of stuff. why do you think Utah is this way?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why do you think we're so good at this?
I mean, not to pimp my own podcast here, but
No, this is what I wanted to get.
No,
into.
I started that Fourth Node podcast because I asked myself that same question when I started getting into this world 20 years ago. It's clear, like, Utah punches way above its weight class. Like, we're right there with Austin and even Chicago, Atlanta. Like, you could even argue New York, in some areas.
Mm-hmm.
And we really shouldn't be. Like, we don't even have an NFL team. We can't get Major League Baseball here without like a lot of work. It shouldn't really be the case. And when I got into tech, I was going to be a doctor my whole life, so I had no idea what that meant. I didn't know anything about running a business.
Mm-hmm.
So I just became a sponge for learning how businesses are built.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to hear about these companies, Novell and WordPerfect and Altiris, and Josh was just kind of getting going with Omniture, and I just became fascinated with them.
Yeah.
And if you keep pulling on those strings, you go all the way back to 1969 when the University of Utah was selected as the fourth node of the internet.
Yep.
And David Evans and Ivan Sutherland kind of building a computer science department for the first time ever. And then they went and recruited these amazing students from all over the country and these amazing professors from all over the country. And it was really like Stanford, UCLA, and Utah had these computer science. That wasn't even a thing. It was just part of the College of Engineering. Computer science wasn't a thing. It's like now if you had an AI department, that's not really a thing. It's part of computer science. And you go look at those students who were there in the 60s and 70s at the U. I mean, Ed Catmull that started Pixar, and John Warnock at Adobe, and Alan Ashton that went on to start WordPerfect with Bruce Bastian, and just
the Atari guy,
Nolan Bushnell,
Bushnell,
a ton of them.
It's crazy,
and they were all there at the same time. They're all in their 20s, and like Tom Stockham's dad, who invented digital audio, was there. And it's these. Utah at the time, though, didn't know how to commercialize any of it.
Sure.
So
that's why a lot of those guys bounced.
They went to the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And we talked to Tom about his dad, and he's like, none of my dad's companies really ever did anything because Utah wasn't ready to commercialize it.
Yeah.
And
no money here.
Yeah. And even when I started in 2003, it was early. Like
no money in 2003 either. Not really.
Most of the execs at Omniture and even Qualtrics, they imported them from other parts of the country. What I'm most excited about for Utah is that's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
If you need a CFO who's done an IPO, there are people in Utah. If you need a CEO to replace a founder, and there are people who've done that in Utah. If there's a ton of money here, you can go raise money from anywhere in the world. You can still pull people to move from other parts of the country, but it's just not necessary like it was even 5 or 10 years ago. And that's what excites me. I think it's like a flywheel of talent. And, that's one of my favorite things about Entrata is, and what I know I'll get the most joy out of is in 20 years, and I go surfing LinkedIn or whatever the LinkedIn of the 20 years from now will be, and look at like, this CFO of this public company, he was at Entrata, and the CRO here, that was one of the Entrata people. And it's exciting for me to just see how much talent we're building, and people can go repeat this and do it again and again.
By the way, I highly recommend people listen to your podcast, The Fourth Node. I love it. I think it's such a genius idea. In fact, I've been talking for years, like somebody needs to write a book. Somebody needs to get like a lot of these are still alive, right?
Yes.
And like somebody really needs to get this recorded and down. And the fact that you took on that project, which is no small project. I've looked at that thing.
Starting a podcast is hard. It takes so much time, but it's fun. It's been really rewarding. Just seeing Tom Stockham talk about his dad, whose dad's been gone for 20 years.
Yeah.
Seeing the Novell early founders talk about Ray Norda, he passed away almost 20 years ago. Bruce Bastian, like his stories. Most people don't know Bruce's story.
Yeah.
He built WordPerfect with no money. They sold that thing for $1 billion. They never took any money on, and it was that one in particular I was really proud of.
Yeah.
He does not do a lot of interviews.
No, it's hard to get him to stuff.
And most of what he's done, he told us, he said most of what I do is gay rights type of interviews. He's like, no one's really ever asked me to tell my story with WordPerfect. And so it was really fun. You could tell it meant a lot to him. It meant a lot to me to allow, like, I'm not a reporter. We're not trying to report
Sure,
anything or do anything.
absolutely.
It's just, like you said, a lot of these people are getting older. And like even Alan Ashton's kids, they were thrilled that we captured their dad's story. And yeah, we've got some more in the hopper. And we decided we're just going to start with some of those early businesses and start to work our way forward and weave in. Like, you know, I don't even think most people in Silicon Slopes today under the age of 35 probably knew what Omniture did.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think any of them probably even heard of Altiris. So
no,
just
not
telling those stories, and it's been fun. We'll see how long it lasts. I have a lot of respect for you for how much content you put out. I got a lot of respect for Bill Simmons starting a podcast because that guy produces dozens of hours every week.
I don't know how he does it.
It's amazing.
By the way, he doesn't need to do it either. Like
right.
That's what's fascinating.
Yeah.
Like he sold The Ringer for like $250 million, which is great.
And he can bounce from pop culture to sports to just it's amazing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't listened to Bill Simmons in a while. Now I feel like I have to. Have you talked to Josh yet?
About what?
On the podcast. About
we're scheduling Josh. Greg Butterfield's on the docket. Dave Spafford of Megahertz. I bet most people have never heard of Megahertz. We interviewed the president of the U yesterday.
Randall? He's an incredible president. The U is so lucky to have him there. I think we have these incredible university presidents here in the state of Utah. But yeah, and they're all amazing. Like President Tuminis is like the greatest person ever. And like we could go down the list. President Randall, he's the right man for that particular university.
I didn't know this. Time. Like I'm a BYU guy, so I didn't really know him or his background. And he said, yeah, I'm the first U grad to be the president of the U in 50 years and the first one from Utah. I'm like, that seems so dumb.
Yeah.
It seems like they should all be from Utah and have graduated from the U. Like I know you're looking for diversity of thought and everything in people who run universities, but like I want someone who cares about Utah.
Yeah.
This is where they live. This is their home. So I think it's great.
he started the Masters of Business Creation program, which is the first ever. Yeah. Right. And I think that'll be like it has the potential to be like when Harvard started the MBA, right?
Yeah.
And that could be really cool. Another kind of feather in the cap for the University of Utah.
Yeah, we talked about that. How students just make good entrepreneurs for some reason. We have nothing to do. You don't have mortgages to pay for whatever reason. I mean, that's when I started my first business. You look at a lot of the companies here, they were started by people in or shortly after college. Back when I was there, a lot of them, I ended up graduating, but most dropped out because the curriculum didn't match up with starting in business. Yeah. And that Masters of Business Creation we discussed on the podcast, which is let's build a curriculum for entrepreneurs. Like your assignment is not a stupid test. It's running a board meeting.
Yeah.
Like, that is genius.
Yeah.
I didn't know they were doing that. It's amazing.
I think that program is incredible. Like, you know, I never want to go to school again, but I was like,
that would be a cool one.
That'd be a fun one to do. Like that. That's pretty cool. What led you to Podium?
Podium. So I had just sold Allegiance.
Yeah, I remember we had lunch and you'd just gotten out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you weren't sure what to do next. And then I think it was like a couple months later you ended up at Podium.
Yeah, I remember taking both Gavin Christensen to lunch and Sid Cromanhook. And I was like, hey guys, I just sold my company. I'm going to be here for a year. At Merit CX, I had nothing to do. I was the chief strategy officer for that year. And no one reported to me. It was weird. So, and I'd never experienced that. So I think I hit you up looking for hey, I'd heard that it was Izeni, was that your company?
Yeah.
Like I was just trying to network with maybe some people who could help me hack some products together or whatever. I had a few ideas I was toying with. And then independently, Gavin and Sid both mentioned we just put this little seed round together for this company called RepDrive. And Sid's the one who introduced me to the two founders, Eric and Dennis, in early 2015, just getting started. They were still selling the product door to door at businesses alone. They didn't even have a sales team yet. I just fell in love with it. It was pretty close to what I had done at Allegiance. It was an industry I got really quickly. And then, like I said, it was the first time I became the hired gun operator guy.
Yeah.
And they already had product market fit. And then I just got to go in there and just go build and hire the exec team and start, raise money. And I had the time of my life.
Have we ever had a company grow that fast? I guess Divvy.
No, they didn't. We went from 1 to 100 in 4 years.
Yeah,
the
that's
only
fast.
company we knew that beat us was Slack.
Wow.
Yeah. It's probably been beaten since.
I don't
Because
think
that was true software ARR.
Yeah. Yeah, that is fast.
It was nuts. It was nuts.
And so, why leave it? Like that's an incredible, again, like this really cool ride. You got there pretty early. I mean, it was still called Rep Drive, right? Like, they started it just right down the street.
Yeah, well, I was at the bike
right?
shop.
At the bike shop.
Yeah.
Why leave it?
That's where I got
That's
to
the burnout?
that point.
Yeah.
I was just trashed.
Yeah.
Just trashed. I didn't have answers anymore to like how to get myself back. I remember talking to the head of sales there, my good friend Than, one day, and I'm like, I feel every day like the day before I did a 100-mile mountain bike race. Like I have nothing, and I couldn't figure it out. And so I went into the Christmas break in 2019, like, okay, I'm just gonna have like 2 weeks. I'm just gonna like sleep and get better. And then I ended up getting like bronchitis and influenza and then bacterial colitis or something crazy. I was in the hospital, and I remember I was in the hospital like on January 2nd in the middle of the night with someone getting over like a drug addiction in the room next to me, screaming at the top of their lungs at like 3 a.m. And I was just like, I'm going to be like rich and dead. And someone else is going to be like spending my money and sleeping with my wife and sitting in my jet seats. I'm going to be dead. So the next day I called our partner at Excel, and I'm like, hey, dude, I'm out.
Yeah.
Like, and not like in 6 months, I'm out.
Yeah.
And then I flew back to Utah. I was in California and told, Eric and Dennis, the exec team and everything. And it was hard to leave that business the way I did. It was very abrupt.
Yeah.
I felt a lot of guilt for a long time. It took me a while to get over how abruptly I left that. I felt like I didn't do it on my own terms. I didn't leave it in a place where everything I was doing could easily be divvied up and taken care of.
Right.
But you live and learn. And
well, in the end, you did what was best for you.
I had to.
You had to. I mean, what choice
done.
do you have?
Yeah,
right. Like
done.
at some point when I was in the hospital for my heart thing, I was like, F everything. I'm not doing anything ever again.
F everything. Make a t-shirt out of that. F everything.
This is pointless. What am I doing all this for? Yeah, that's interesting that you went through that experience. Is your health okay now?
Yeah, I'm good. I've got like a few things I figured out. I got diagnosed with celiac a few years ago. So like diet, I've kind of gotten dialed in knowing that. I've got a little, my youngest son also has that. So he was pumped when he found out that I was going to be gluten-free with him. Yeah, I do a better job of balancing it. It's like a necessary part of me having a job. Like I remember when I hired my EA, I'm like, your job is to make sure I don't quit, which involves my health and making sure I'm like being a good dad and all that kind of stuff. Like, but that was like how I kind of positioned the job is I've got to be healthy and I've got to like stay on top of my family stuff, or I know I'll have another outcome where like just one day I'm just going to leave and I can't like go through that mentally again.
Yeah. What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh gosh.
Have you thought about that?
I just want people to, I've got a lot of care inside my heart for people.
Yeah.
And there's times I worry that gets misread, or people don't, like, they put me in a box because of my title of like, oh, just another one of those like annoying tech CEOs. I just want people to, like, if I got hit by a bus, I just want people to say he was just a good guy that was there for people.
Yeah.
Like, that's honestly all I would ever want my legacy to be. I don't need like fame or things named after me or any of that. I just want to have a lot of friends that if they just say Adam was always there for me, that's all I could ever hope for.
Well, you've got that, my friend. I can tell you that. I don't know anyone who doesn't say that exact thing about you. What do you think Utah looks like 10, 20 years from now?
It's a good question. I think we're going to look more diverse in the types of companies we start to build. When we acquired that business, I actually quoted you in my LinkedIn thing in the last interview we did a few years ago, you asked me what the next step was for Utah, and I said we need to. Most of our companies we build and they get sold to a platform outside of Utah, and we now need to start building platforms. And with Qualtrics spinning out of SAP, I think we've got a platform.
Yeah.
I think Entrata is going to be a platform. I think with Pluralsight, with Vista behind them, I think they can become a platform that lasts for decades. We know how to build SaaS platforms. I'd love to see us start building other kind of businesses too. We've got just a lot of biotech energy, like what my buddy Nate Walkingshaw is building. Renewable energy out of Utah. Like there's going to be more businesses than just like we're really good at B2B SaaS. We're really good at it. Maybe as good as anywhere in the world.
Probably the best. Yeah.
We know how to sell it. We know how to build it. Like we're really, really good at that. And I'm not the one to lead us there. Like I only know how to do B2B SaaS. So, but that luckily we have smart and, brave entrepreneurs, a guy like Nate, he's a tinkerer. He's an inventor. He was at
that company's so cool.
It is cool. It's great. Like using a 10,000 pound piece of metal to spin around really fast to create energy. I'm like, I don't know how you figure that out.
I don't know either.
But it's cool.
Yeah. That actually is incredible. Yeah. We need to build like legacy businesses that are here for generational companies, right? I think that's what you and I talked about. It's like, how do you build generational companies? Yeah. What has your experience been post-COVID and, the big debate around like, should you do hybrid work from home, in office? You have this beautiful office up on the top of the hill there in Lehigh. What has your experience been?
Yeah. Well, I know it's shocking, but people just seem to make this such an extreme debate, which is just so annoying. Like everybody went all remote and all back in the office. I've just felt the whole time like it depends on the job. Yeah. There's some jobs you like take like an outbound sales rep that's just generating calls. The most important part of success for that job is their initial ramp up, which you can't do remote. You have to be like in this kind of bullpen environment, hearing other people make dials, being able to ask your neighbor like what works, what doesn't work, being able to like practice. That has to be in the office. Yeah, it can't be remote. There's other jobs, like we have a bunch of jobs that are totally fine being done from home. We can track productivity easily remotely. Engineers, we were a little fortunate at Entrata because the company kind of had been remote from the beginning because a lot of our engineering efforts out of Pune, India, and our sales team was all over the place. They're field reps. So we kind of knew how to do it. But as we've, discussed internally, we're number one, we're too big to like have any edicts of you have to be in the office X number of days a week. So we've just kind of rolled it out by department. And there's some teams that they're in the office every day. Yeah. There's some teams that have decided like 2 days in the office is fine. And then we have some teams that are completely hybrid remote because we know how to manage remote. Yeah. And I think it's important to at least have some flexibility in how you design that strategy and going one way or the other. Like there's a lot of data, I talked about this with Sid Tetro about a month ago. There's a lot of data showing how many more women are entering and being successful in the workforce because of hybrid and remote work. Yeah. And if you turn that off, you turn that talent pool away too. So you got to know you're turning that entire talent pool off. Yeah. And that's important to us to keep that going. So there's just it's you just on LinkedIn, Twitter, everybody just runs to one side of the room so quickly. And for me, it's the answer is just it depends. Yeah. And especially depends on the role and how good you are at managing.
Oh, for sure. What about AI? How's that going to disrupt you guys?
I don't think it'll disrupt us, but it's going to accelerate us. So you think of how people find apartments, it's very similar to Google. Like you start out with a search online, you're like looking at a bunch of different choices. You have to go make a bunch of phone calls or send in emails. Do you allow pets? Do you have this? Do you have that? Anything like that has lots of question and answer return is perfect for AI. Yeah. And so we've already had, for the last few years, we've had an AI technology that helps deflect phone calls coming into our customers that can answer a lot of these questions in an automated way. But I see a future 5 or 10 years where, I look at my 20-year-old, he pays for GPT-4 just for personal search because it's so much better than Google for him. And so for him, I think in 5 years, he's not going to apartments.com or any of these places anymore to find an apartment. He is writing into his GPT-4 prompt I need a 2-bedroom place in Salt Lake City that allows a dog within a mile of the University of Utah.
Yeah.
And there they are. And then he asks automated questions. What about this? What about this? What about this? And it's done.
Yeah.
So for us, it's pretty exciting because we have a real big opportunity there. We have 14 million residents that live in our units. We have a huge audience trying to interact with our customers, the property managers, which are small staffs, dispersed all over the place. Anything we can do to automate, make their jobs easier has a huge impact.
Yeah. Finally, I see you as like this great leader, and I don't know anyone who would disagree with that. I wonder if you have any advice for, this is a tough time to be running a company right now, right? AI disruption, the interest rates going up. There's a million things you could point to as like, that's kind of weird time. You have to, some companies have to do layoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Some companies have to do the opposite of that, right? Like, what advice do you have for leaders who are in your shoes, but in, different companies on like kind of handle this and to be a leader during all of this?
Gosh, it's hard. What I wish I could tell them all is go have a midlife crisis and move to San Clemente for a couple of years. Because honestly, that's what it took for me to go figure myself out. I would say, you remember that in A Star is Born, there's a scene where Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, they're on a roof and she's about to go on stage and they're looking at a billboard with her picture on it.
Uh-huh.
And Bradley Cooper, like in that raspy, deep voice, is like, you better dig deep down into your soul and you better believe what you say.
That was a good impression of it.
You like that?
Yeah, that was great.
Or your audience will know.
Yeah.
That's probably my main piece of advice to leaders is like, whatever you believe deep down inside your soul, whoever you are is going to come out.
Yeah.
Employees, people, investors, everybody's smart now. Everybody sees through the bull crap. Everybody sees through the cliches. You can't buy time by just spinning things a certain way to try and get yourself through difficult situations. It just takes honesty, authenticity, knowing what you're good at and not knowing what you're not good at. And you have to just have like really, really good people around you. And if you can't if I saw this, I can't remember who said this the last couple of weeks. It was a sports situation, but it was if people won't follow you, you're not a leader.
Mm-hmm.
You might have a title that makes you think that, but if people aren't going to follow you, I'm sorry, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's makes sense or helpful, but that's kind of how I look at leadership is you've got to mean what you say. You've got to back it up. And that's why for me, the second I can't give it anymore, I'll have to go take another break in San Clemente.
Yeah.
Because people will figure it out. You can't fake it.
Yeah, for sure. Adam, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for the invite, man.
Seriously. And thanks for everything you've done. And you've got a monster on your hands, man. Just keep riding that thing.
Appreciate it, bro.
Okay. Thanks.
Good to see you.